The towel slipped from my hands, but I didn't flinch. Her laugh, a dry, hollow chuckle that bounced off the laundry room tiles, hung in the air like mildew. "You're lucky I even let you touch me." That's what Vanessa said. Like I was some leper who'd won a raffle. Like decades of providing, fixing, covering her mistakes, and paying off her credit card disasters were just pathetic tributes she tolerated out of politeness. She turned, humming, tossing her blouse into the dryer like nothing had happened. I just watched her. Not angry, not even sad. Something quieter, sharper. I folded the last t-shirt, an old one from the state fair we went to, back before her veneers, before her Pilates instructor with the ridiculous name, before she stopped asking how my day was. I folded it with more care than I'd handled her in months, placed it neatly on the stack, and walked out. In the hallway, her phone buzzed. A giggle followed. Another message from whoever she thought was her escape hatch. Her voice changed when she texted lately. Eerier, like she was suddenly 20 again. I used to like that sound. Now it just reminded me that good liars always enjoy the setup. I passed the mirror. Sure, I had more wrinkles than I did at 40, but I also built machines that could carve titanium to half a human hair's width. I wasn't some slob begging for scraps of affection. But in this house, I was a placeholder. And placeholders don't argue. We execute. Downstairs, I opened my office drawer. Inside was a small oak box I'd carved myself after retiring. It was supposed to hold cufflinks. Instead, it was going to hold the truth. I flipped open my laptop. No rush, no drama. Just a man doing what he always did, cataloging, protecting, cleaning up someone else's mess. The folder was still there, waiting for the day she smirked one too many times. First up, email printouts. A realtor friend had CC'd her on some fun weekend plans that lined up perfectly with her so-called work trips. Then the texts, easy to collect ever since I synced her phone to the family iPad 6 months ago. She never noticed. She thought it was just for Netflix in the guest room. One message stuck out. "Can't wait to see you outside the sheets for once LOL." And the reply? A bathroom mirror selfie from a hotel I recognized instantly. The birthstone, lavender soap, stale desperation, and now, evidence. I smiled faintly. Slow wasn't weakness. Slow was precision. And precision was the only language I spoke fluently. Vanessa always thought I was the kind of man who didn't check receipts. Maybe that was true once. But I'd learned to check patterns, and people like her always left fingerprints. I organized the emails by date. Chronology matters when you're about to dismantle someone's sense of safety. Then I opened the iPad. Her messages to him had a tone I hadn't heard in years. Sweet. Sugary. Nothing like the clipped, obligatory words she tossed my way. One line, though, stuck like a splinter. "He's nice but dull." A placeholder. My life started late. Dull. Placeholder. She'd finally said the quiet part out loud. I leaned back in my chair, letting the words roll off me like rain on steel. Then I clicked save and dropped everything into the USB folder I'd labeled June Justice. Encrypted, backed up, copied 3 times. One flash drive, one cloud, one old hard drive hidden in the garage toolbox she thought was just for screwdrivers. By the time she came downstairs that night, makeup off, robe on, wearing that smug little good wife expression, I was already deep into my second pass through the evidence. "You didn't say good night," she said, trying to sound tender. "I figured you were tired of touching me," I replied with a smile. She blinked, misread my calm for resignation, and muttered, "You're being dramatic." I just nodded slowly. "Because men like me don't need second chances, Vanessa. We need evidence." She went upstairs. I stayed at the desk, my hand resting on the oak box, knowing it wouldn't be empty for long. Not with the story she'd been writing for me. The thing about liars is they get comfortable. They start believing their own cover stories, and that's when they stop looking over their shoulder. 2 weeks later, Vanessa had a client dinner. Normally, she'd at least fake a call about being late, but that night she didn't bother. She came home smelling like citrus cologne that sure as hell wasn't mine, her lipstick smudged in that half-wiped way. "How was the client?" I asked from the couch. "Which one?" She shot back without missing a beat. Wrong move. I didn't need to know the answer, but her reflex told me enough. She poured herself a glass of wine, kicked off her heels, and started telling a story about a networking opportunity in Ridge Hill. Interesting choice, since my evidence folder already had a hotel receipt from Ridge Hill with her name and a second guest. While she talked, My eyes drifted to her purse on the counter. Not out of temptation, out of habit. You can tell a lot about a person by the state of their bag. Hers looked heavier than usual. Later that night, when she was in the shower, I peeked inside. Napkin with a number on it. A matchbook from the birthstone. And, best of all, a folded event program from an industry mixer dated for the same night. She claimed she was stuck in traffic last month. I didn't pocket them. I photographed everything in place, then slid it all back exactly the way I found it. You don't burn a bridge while you're still driving across it. The next morning, over coffee, she mentioned Ridge Hill again, testing me, maybe. I nodded politely, let her think the subject was harmless. In my head, though, I was already building the final scene of this little play. She was going to walk into it smiling that there's a difference between catching someone and letting them catch themselves. The first makes you look desperate. The second makes you look inevitable. I decided long before the Ridge Hill story that I wasn't going to confront Vanessa in a kitchen argument like some soap opera extra. She thrived on drama, loved the rush of flipping the script and painting herself as the misunderstood victim. No, if I was going to do this, it would be on my terms. So I started making the kind of moves she wouldn't notice until they were already finished. The first was with our finances. I'd been the one managing the bills for years, which meant I knew exactly where to look. She thought her little private checking account was a secret, probably because she'd opened it under her maiden name. Cute. What she didn't know was that our joint savings had quietly stopped transferring money into it 3 weeks ago. The second move was more delicate. I started scheduling my late nights at work on the same days she had hers. Except I wasn't at work. I was in my car, parked a block away from the Birthstone or whichever overpriced steakhouse she was pretending to network at. I didn't follow her inside. I didn't need to. I just waited for the text from the iPad sync. The timestamps always lined up perfectly with when she was wrapping up dinner. By the fourth coincidence, I had a neat little log. Date, location, the man's name, or at least his initials, and a snippet of whatever syrupy nonsense they'd been exchanging. A couple of them even came with photos. Nothing explicit, just cozy enough to hang a marriage on. But the real trap wasn't the evidence. It was the event I invited her to. Every year, the local business association hosted a charity gala. Vanessa loved it. It was the perfect stage for her. Expensive dress, sparkling wine, and half the room pretending to admire her real estate hustle while she pretended to care about the cause. I told her I'd secured us a prime table this year, right near the mayor's group. She was thrilled. What I didn't mention was that I'd also secured an extra invitation. Not for me, for him. I made it look like a clerical error, mailed anonymously from the association, complete with his name neatly typed on the envelope. I knew she'd tell him. She couldn't resist the idea of showing off her real partner to a room full of people she thought I couldn't impress anymore. The night of the gala, I played it straight. Black tux, polished shoes, the whole 9 yards. She came down the stairs in a dress I'd never seen before, deep green with a slit high enough to start a conversation. The perfume hit me first, something new, sharper, maybe a gift from him. You look different, I said, keeping my tone neutral. It's called trying, she replied with a smirk. The drive to the hotel was silent except for her phone buzzing twice in her clutch. She didn't check it, but the smile gave her away. When we walked into the ballroom, the place was already buzzing, glasses clinking, the jazz band warming up, politicians laughing too loudly near the open bar. Vanessa was in her element, air-kissing acquaintances, introducing me to people she clearly didn't expect me to remember. And then, right on cue, he arrived. Tall, square jaw, the kind of guy who looked like he'd practiced his handshake in a mirror. I recognized him instantly from the photos. She lit up when she saw him, the way she hadn't for me in years. Logan, this is. I cut her off with a smile. We've met. Ridge Hill, wasn't it? That flicker in her eyes was worth the months of planning. He covered well, some half-joke about small towns, but the damage was done. She knew I knew. She just didn't know how much. Dinner was a study in subtlety. I kept my conversation light, even cracked a joke or two. She kept glancing at him from across the table. He kept glancing at her. And every time, I caught it. Halfway through the meal, I excused myself and stepped into the hallway. That's when I made the final call to a contact at the local paper. Check your inbox, I told her. Photos, dates, names. You'll want to run it before next week. The beauty of small-town journalism is that anything with a whiff of scandal gets fast-tracked. especially when it involves public figures, like a city council candidate having an affair with a married woman whose husband just happens to have every receipt. When I returned to the table, dessert had arrived. Chocolate mousse for her, creme brulee for me. I tapped my spoon against the caramel top, slow and steady. "You seem quiet tonight," she said, trying to sound casual. "Just thinking," I replied, "about how endings and beginnings often look the same." She frowned, not sure if it was poetry or a warning. After dinner, she drifted toward him near the coat check. I stayed back, watching. He whispered something in her ear, and she laughed that same 20-year-old laugh from her texts. For a moment, I almost admired their audacity. Almost. By the time we got home, she'd gone quiet. Maybe it was the champagne. Maybe it was the look I'd given her when she thought I wasn't looking. She went upstairs without a word. I stayed in the office, the oak box open on the desk, now lined with neatly stacked photographs and printouts. I didn't feel victorious. Not yet. This wasn't the kind of win you celebrated with a toast. This was the kind you sealed up tight, let ferment until the timing was perfect. And the timing was close. The funny thing about reputation is that it's like a silk curtain. Beautiful when the light hits it, but one stray spark and the whole thing's gone before you can find water. For Vanessa, the spark arrived 2 days after the gala. It was a Tuesday morning, 8:17 a.m., and she was still in bed scrolling through her phone while I made coffee. I could hear the faint ping of incoming notifications. Rapid, urgent. At first, she laughed, thinking it was just her little social circle reacting to whatever filtered brunch photo she'd posted the night before. But the laughter got quieter, then stopped altogether. I leaned against the doorway, mug in hand. "What's wrong?" I asked. She shot me a glare that was supposed to be threatening, but was mostly panicked. "Someone's spreading lies about me online." "Lies?" I took a sip, kept my voice flat. "What kind of lies?" She hesitated, thumb frozen over her phone screen. They're saying I'm having an affair. They even posted pictures." "Oh." I let that hang in the air for a moment. Must be some mix-up. Her head snapped up, eyes narrowed. She was searching for something in my face. Guilt, fear, maybe a hint that I was behind it. I gave her nothing but polite curiosity. She stormed past me toward the office, muttering about calling the editor. I followed at a distance. She plopped into my desk chair, already dialing, and that's when she saw the oak box. I'd left it open, center of the desk, the photos fanned out like a dealer showing his hand. She froze. "Where did you get these?" she demanded. "Patterns," I said simply. "What does that even mean?" Her voice was rising, that mix of outrage and the realization that outrage wouldn't erase the truth. "It means," I said, walking over, "that you're very consistent. Same restaurants, same hotels, same lies." Made it easy. Her breathing was shallow now. "You've been spying on me?" "Collecting evidence," I corrected. Big difference. Spying is for people who want to know the truth. Evidence is for people who already know it. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced down at the screen and groaned. "It's Celeste. She says she's getting calls from clients asking if I'm still with you." "Well," I said, "I suppose that depends on your definition of with." She threw the phone on the desk and spun toward me, her eyes wet, but not from sorrow. This was survival mode, pure and simple. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've ruined me." I shook my head slowly. "No, Vanessa. You ruined you. I just put a mirror in front of it." She sank back into the chair, pressing her fingers to her temples like she could massage her way out of the moment. "We can fix this," she muttered. "We just need to get ahead of it. Issue a statement. Say these photos are old, out of context." "Vanessa," I interrupted, "there's no fixing it. Not the way you're thinking. Your little property tours and wine tastings? They're already whispering. By the end of the week, you'll be the cautionary tale of every bored spouse in the county." She looked at me then, not with anger, but calculation. "What do you want?" It was almost funny, the assumption that this was a negotiation. That if she could just write the right number on the check, she could buy her way out of consequences. "What I want," I said, "is for you to sit in exactly the spot you've made for yourself. And I want you to understand that you didn't lose to me. You lost to your own arrogance." The rest of the day was silent, except for her pacing upstairs and the occasional ding of another message she didn't want to open. By the time evening came, she'd stopped pretending she had a plan. She sat on the couch staring at the muted TV while I read in the armchair. At 9:03 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from my contact at the paper. Stories live. Online front page. I glanced up. How's your wine? I asked her. She blinked, confused. Fine. Good. You might want to savor it. You won't be welcome at half the tastings after tonight. Her phone buzzed again, louder this time. She picked it up, saw the headline, and went pale. Local realtor's alleged affair with city council candidate rocks small business gala. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The silence was the sound of someone realizing that the curtain wasn't just on fire. It had already burned to the floor. For the next hour, she fielded calls, texts, and one very awkward FaceTime from Celeste. Each time, she tried a different tactic: denial, outrage, victimhood, but I could hear in her voice that none of it was landing. The evidence was too clean, the timeline too tight. Eventually, she hung up, dropped the phone on the coffee table, and turned to me. You think this makes you the good guy? You think people will see you as some noble, wronged husband? I closed my book and looked her in the eye. I don't care how they see me. I care that they see you. She flinched like I'd slapped her. For the first time in years, she didn't have a comeback. She just sat there, small and quiet in the glow of the lamp, the weight of her own choices pressing down. I stood, stretched, and headed for the stairs. Get some rest, I said over my shoulder. Tomorrow's going to be busy. And it would be, because tomorrow was when I'd make the real move. Vanessa didn't sleep that night. I could hear her pacing upstairs long after I'd turned off my lamp. The floorboards creaked in slow, deliberate steps, then faster ones, like she was walking circles around her own thoughts. Every so often, her phone would buzz again, muted now, but still lit up the hallway with that cold LED flash. By morning, she'd done what every cornered person does: swapped panic for a fragile layer of fake control. She came down in a blazer, hair tied back in a perfect bun, and said she had meetings to attend. That was rich, considering 3 of the people she worked with had already shared the article on Facebook with the kind of commentary you couldn't recover from. You want coffee? I asked from the kitchen. No, I don't have time, she said, grabbing her bag. And I'd appreciate it if you stayed out of my way today. I smiled into my mug. Oh, I wouldn't dream of getting in your way. She left without another word, slamming the door like punctuation. While she was out playing damage control, I made my own calls. Not to friends, not to family. Those bridges could burn later. I called my lawyer, who had been on retainer for 6 months, and gave him the green light to file. I also called the bank, where the joint account had been joint in name only since I'd moved most of our assets into a trust with my name on it. I wasn't divorcing in the heat of betrayal. I was divorcing in the cold clarity of preparation. By noon, I'd signed the final set of instructions for the trust. By 2, I'd approved the draft of the separation filing. And by 3, I'd met with a private notary to timestamp the last batch of documents for my records. I didn't have to wonder what Vanessa was doing. She'd been texting her sister all morning. Those messages still synced to the iPad in the guest room, trying to frame herself as the victim. Apparently, I was psychologically abusive, controlling, and vindictive. I almost admired how quickly she'd found her talking points. Almost. She came home late, just before sunset, shoulders squared like she'd rehearsed her entrance. Busy day? I asked without looking up from my desk. I met with my broker. We've got a plan to handle the fallout, she said briskly. And we need to talk about appearances. If you want this to blow over, you can't keep feeding it. Feeding it, I repeated. Yes, she said. You're the one who handed everything to the press. Don't deny it. I closed the laptop and looked her dead in the eye. I don't deny it. But you're wrong about the reason. I didn't do it to embarrass you. I did it so you couldn't rewrite the story later. That made her pause, just for a second, before she plastered on the practice scowl again. You're pathetic. You think anyone's on your side? News cycles move fast. In 2 weeks, no one will care. Maybe, I said with a shrug. But you'll care tomorrow. She didn't ask what I meant, and I didn't volunteer it. Some gifts are better as surprises. The next morning, she found out what I meant. I'd arranged a meeting at her office, a meeting she wasn't invited to. The broker, the 2 senior agents she worked with, and the HR manager all gathered in the conference room with a printout of the article on the table. I didn't need to be there to know how it went. My contact in HR called me afterward. She didn't take it well, he said. We've put her on leave while we review. Take your time, I told him. When Vanessa got home, she didn't stomp through the door like before. She walked in slowly. as if she'd aged 10 years in the span of 8 hours. She didn't speak until she reached the kitchen. "You went to my office?" "No," I said. "Your office came to me." They're not thrilled about being dragged into a scandal. She dropped her bag on the floor and just stood there, staring at me. "Do you know what you've done? You've taken my job, my reputation, everything I've worked for." I cut her off with a quiet laugh. "Vanessa, I didn't take anything. You handed it all to me. I just decided not to give it back." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She walked past me into the living room, sat on the couch, and for the first time in months, didn't pick up her phone. She just stared out the window like she was watching her own life pack up and leave without her. That night, I added the final item to the oak box, the signed divorce petition. It sat on top of the stack of photos and receipts, the neat red tab of my lawyer's binder clip like a seal of completion. I thought about showing it to her then, watching her face as she realized this wasn't just public humiliation. It was legal separation, asset protection, and the end of whatever story she thought she was still writing. But I didn't, because the real ending, the one she would never see coming, wasn't just about divorce. It was about leaving her in a place where she had to live with the wreckage she made, while I walked away untouched. And that required one more step. The next day, I started calling in favors. Old clients from my manufacturing days. Local business owners who'd shared drinks with me over the years. I didn't smear her name. That work was already done. I just made sure my side of the story was clear, that I was rebuilding, moving forward, and keeping my distance from personal drama. It worked. By the weekend, people weren't just avoiding Vanessa. They were inviting me to things again. Dinners, golf outings, casual coffees. The subtext was clear: we've picked our side. Vanessa noticed. She started asking questions in that indirect way. "Did anyone call for me? Or were you out with someone from the club?" Like she was fishing for a sign, she could still claw her way back into the circle. I gave her nothing. On Sunday night, she cornered me in the hallway. "What's your endgame here?" she demanded. "To finish what you started," I said. "And what's that supposed to mean?" I stepped past her, heading for the stairs. "You'll find out soon enough." The week after she lost her job was the quietest our house had been in years. Not peaceful quiet, more like the hush before a storm. She stopped slamming doors, stopped firing off those sharp little digs at breakfast. She even cooked dinner twice, which was either guilt or a peace offering. I accepted both, because the one thing more unnerving to a person like Vanessa than a fight is no reaction at all. She tried small talk a few times. I answered politely. She tried dressing up for errands and leaving her phone behind, as if that erased months of GPS pins and hotel receipts. She even brought up counseling. That's when I knew she was circling the drain. Counseling was her Hail Mary. The C. I tried, defense she could trot out later. I said yes. I even booked the appointment. But I also made sure the date was 2 days after the divorce papers would be served. The next move was social. I arranged a small gathering at our house, ostensibly a casual dinner for friends. She lit up when I told her, thinking maybe this was my olive branch. She spent 2 days fussing over the table settings, the wine list, the menu. What she didn't know was that the guest list included 3 people who'd already seen the contents of my oak box: my lawyer, my banker, and one of the more influential women on the local charity circuit. All of them smiling, all of them playing along. Dinner was smooth, pleasant even. Vanessa poured wine and charmed like her life depended on it. And in a way, it did. But halfway through dessert, the doorbell rang. She opened it to find a process server with an envelope. She froze. "What's this?" she asked. "Divorce petition," he said. "You've been served." The look on her face, half a smile for the guests, half an implosion, was the most honest expression I'd seen from her in years. That I didn't kick her out. Not yet. That would have made her the wronged party in the eyes of the public. Instead, I gave her 30 days to make arrangements. During those 30 days, I made my own. I'd already moved the accounts, shifted property titles, and even transferred the lease on her precious Range Rover into her name alone. No more company car. The insurance, the payments, the upkeep, all hers now. I also let slip to a mutual acquaintance that I'd be renting a loft downtown just for a change of pace. I knew it would get back to her, and I knew she'd picture me living well before she'd even figured out her next address. She didn't throw tantrums anymore. She just deflated. The woman who used to command rooms now walked through the grocery store like she was hoping no one noticed her. The day before her move-out deadline, I came home to find her sitting at the kitchen table, a glass of wine in hand. No makeup, no smile. Congratulations, she said flatly. You win. This wasn't a game, I replied. Of course it was, she said. You just played better. I set my keys down and slid a small envelope across the table. She looked at it suspiciously before opening it. Inside was a check, not huge, but enough for a few months' rent. What's this? She asked. Consider it seed money, I said, for starting over. Somewhere far enough away that people only know your name from your driver's license. She frowned, confused. Why would you give me this after everything? I leaned forward. Because I want you to remember something, Vanessa. I could have left you with nothing. Instead, I left you with exactly what you deserve, just enough to realize how much more you lost. She didn't say thank you. She didn't cry. She just stared at me like she was trying to memorize the face of the man she'd underestimated. The next morning, she was gone. The oak box sat on my desk, empty now. I didn't keep the evidence. Didn't need to. Because the real revenge wasn't in the papers, the photos, or the public shaming. It was in the fact that from here on out, every time she poured a glass of wine in some rented kitchen, she'd know she'd been outplayed by the man she thought was just a placeholder. And that is permanent.